being kicked out of your own home by family. That hits different. Not the kind of pain a stranger could ever deliver. My name is Bruno Taylor, and I'm 69 years old. A widower of 8 months after laying my wife, Martha, to rest. What happened next would have broken her heart all over again. My son's wife, Amber, decided I was nothing more than old baggage, a distraction from her glittering online empire. So one afternoon, while the neighbors looked on, she tossed my clothes, my tools, and my wife's cedar recipe box out on the lawn like junk. That little wooden box, 40 years of Martha's handwriting, love, and history, sat in the dirt under the sun. Amber didn't just cross a line that day. She made a mistake worth $85,000, the exact amount of a business loan she'd taken out with my forged signature. And she had no idea that I, the quiet old man she mocked, had spent 3 decades as a postal systems auditor, trained in spotting financial fraud. 52 hours later, I walked right back through that same front door, not as a humiliated old man, but as the legal primary borrower, armed with documents that would turn her influencer empire into her worst nightmare. But before we get to that moment, let me take you back to how it all began. Martha passed on February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on me. 40 years together, and she leaves me on the same date I first told her I loved her. Grief, it makes you blind sometimes. Makes you miss what's right in front of you. A week after the funeral, my son Scott called. "Dad, you can't stay in that big old house all alone. Come live with us. There's plenty of space." At the time, I thought it was kindness. Turns out, it was opportunity. Scott and Amber had been house hunting for years. They had good jobs. He worked construction management. She ran an online lifestyle brand, but no down payment. Houses in Mesa County were running close to $400,000, and they needed 80 grand to avoid PMI. I had exactly $340,000 left after selling the home Martha, and I built from scratch. Every board, every nail, 40 years of our life together. I didn't hesitate. I wrote the check for the down payment. "Put Scott's name on the deed," I told the agent. "Help him build credit." Famous last words. The first incident came only 3 weeks after I moved in. I was in the kitchen, cooking Martha's pot roast, her handwriting still guiding me from that cedar box. Amber walked in, arms folded, nose wrinkling like she'd stepped into something unpleasant. "Bruno, you've got to move on," she said. "This whole dead wife shrine thing, it's depressing. You're stuck in the past." Scott agrees. I didn't argue. I just stirred the pot and said softly, "Amber, I'm just making dinner." But that night I wrote it down. Date, time, words, every bit of it. A habit from 30 years in the Postal Service. Document everything. The second incident came Memorial Day weekend. I was in the garage organizing my tools. Every wrench in its place, like always. Amber stormed in, phone in hand, ring light already glowing. "Hey, Life Glow family," she chirped. "So, slight issue this morning. Some people just can't respect boundaries when you're building an empire." She swung the camera toward me. I froze, holding a framed photo of Martha. "This is my father-in-law," she continued. "He's struggling with some grief issues and doesn't get that I need quiet for work." I'll watch her upload that video later. Title: Boundaries When Family Doesn't Support Your Grind. 2,847 views. 93 comments, most agreeing with her. That's when I realized what I was really dealing with. Amber wasn't just rude. She was performative. Everything was content, even my pain. So I kept my mouth shut. But I started recording. I bought a little Sony digital recorder, $47 at Best Buy. Fit right in my shirt pocket. Every conversation, every whisper, I recorded it. Call it paranoia or call it instinct. When someone treats your dead wife's memory like clickbait, you start thinking like a detective again. Because grief might dull your heart, but not your training. And I had training. 30 years of it. By July, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Amber came to the breakfast table one morning, setting up her tripod like always. "Brun, we need to talk about your contribution," she said. I looked up from my oatmeal. "I thought we agreed on $800 a month." She sighed dramatically. "That was before I realized the emotional impact of having you here. Utilities, energy, my time. It's more like $1,200 now." I blinked. Emotional impact? Yes, she said. You bring down the vibe, Bruno. Negativity affects my content. My followers can feel that. I didn't answer. I just wrote it down later. July 9th. Amber raised rent to $1,200 due to emotional energy. Every week, something new changed. She started labeling the fridge shelves. Amber, do not touch. For live glow shoots only. Then she locked the pantry, said it was for inventory. One afternoon, I caught her in my room, holding Martha's jewelry box. Oh, she said, startled. I was just decluttering. Thought maybe we could sell this old stuff for some extra income. That was Martha's wedding ring she was holding. My voice came out low and steady. Put it back, Amber. She rolled her eyes. You're so sentimental. It's just metal and stone. But I noticed something then. She didn't leave the room right away. She looked around. She was taking inventory. And that's when the suspicion really started to grow. I called my old friend Pete, a retired postal inspector. Pete, I said, what do you know about small business loans? He chuckled. Depends who's asking, you or the Bureau. Let's say it's personal. He explained how online lenders were approving loans fast, sometimes just with digital signatures. All you needed was a matching SSN and an IP address from a verified location. That night, I checked my email history. 3 messages from a company called Golden Ridge Capital, all unread. Subject line, your loan has been approved, Mr. Taylor. I stared at the dates. April 12th, April 14th, April 16th. 2 days apart each. I never applied for a loan. I opened the attached PDF, and there it was. My name, my address, my signature. Only one problem. The signature wasn't mine. It was forged. I sat there for an hour, staring at that document. Then I remembered something. A few weeks earlier, Amber had asked to scan my driver's license for a discount card application. I'd handed it over without thinking. My stomach dropped. I called the bank first thing the next morning. This is Harold from Mesa First, the teller said after checking my records. Sir, that loan was taken against your property as collateral. My house, the one I paid off with Martha. The same one Amber and Scott were living in. That's when I stopped being sad and started being methodical that I contacted my lawyer, a quiet man named Ernest Hill, who'd handled my estate paperwork years ago. Ernest, I said, I think someone forged my name on a business loan. He didn't even hesitate. Send me copies. And Bruno, stop talking to them until we confirm the details. So I did. And within 48 hours, Ernest called back. Bruno, the loan is real. The funds were deposited into an account under Amber Taylor's business, LifeGlow Media, LLC. You're listed as the primary borrower. I closed my eyes. How much? $85,000. Default due in 60 days. I felt my hands tremble for the first time in years. Martha and I had built our entire life on honesty, on careful bookkeeping, on trust. Now my own daughter-in-law had used that against me. But there was something she didn't know. When you work 30 years in the postal system, auditing, tracing paper trails, following fraud, you learn patience. And Amber had just walked into a trap she didn't even know existed. The next morning, she strutted into the kitchen like usual, filming herself making smoothies. Bruno, she said without looking up, I need you out by Friday. We're renovating the guest room into a content studio. I just smiled. Friday, huh? That's soon. Yeah, she said. Scott agrees. It's time. I nodded. Then I guess I should get my affairs in order. She smirked, not realizing the double meaning. That night, I backed up every recording I had, every insult, every manipulation, every financial conversation. Then I called Ernest. Ernest, file the fraud report and prepare the eviction reversal. Eviction reversal? Yeah, I said, because technically I still own half this house. When Friday came, I stood on the front lawn, surrounded by my things. Amber was live streaming again. Hey, LifeGlow family, she chirped. Sometimes you have to protect your peace, even from family. Her followers flooded the comments with heart emojis and clapping hands. But they didn't know that, in the background, a sheriff's car was rolling up the street, holding a warrant for financial fraud, identity theft, and property misrepresentation. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done grieving, done being quiet, Done letting people mistake kindness for weakness. Because when you take everything from a man who's already lost the love of his life, you leave him with nothing to fear. And a man with nothing to fear can do anything. Amber's tone was sharp, businesslike. $1.2, Bruno. It's only fair, she said, as if I was a tenant in her Airbnb, not her husband's father. I looked at her across the table. You're asking me to pay rent in a house I bought. She smiled like a real estate agent closing a deal. Technically, you gave the money as a gift. The deed's in Scott's name. That's how gifting works. Her words hit harder than any slap could. I wanted to argue, but I saw Scott walking down the hall, face buried in his phone. Amber, he mumbled, maybe we can talk about this later? Later doesn't pay the bills, she snapped. Scott glanced at me, guilt flickering across his face, but he said nothing. That silence told me everything. I'd raised a son who'd rather keep peace with his wife than stand up for his father. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table staring at Martha's recipe box, running my hand over the cedar lid. She used to hum when she cooked, a soft tune from her childhood. I could almost hear it, faint as a whisper. I whispered back, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have known better. The next morning, I made my decision. If they wanted me gone, they'd get their wish, but on my terms. I began quietly moving my important documents to my car, bank statements, my pension info, Martha's will, and a file that Amber didn't know existed, the loan paperwork. See, back when Amber started her Life Glow business, she bragged about getting an $85,000 small business loan. Said it was based on her entrepreneurial vision. What she didn't mention was whose name she'd used to secure it. Mine. The signature was nearly perfect. Same cursive loop on the B, same pen pressure, even the same blue ink I used on my checks. But one thing Amber didn't know. Martha bought me a custom fountain pen for our 25th anniversary. The nib left a tiny nick on the paper, always in the same spot. That mark wasn't on the loan document. She'd forged it. I drove to Mesa County Federal Credit Union and asked for a meeting with the loan officer. The young man looked startled when I told him I was Bruno Taylor, the co-signer. He pulled up the file, and sure enough, there it was. Sir, are you saying this isn't your signature? I'm saying whoever signed that paper committed federal bank fraud. The color drained from his face. We'll need to contact our legal department. You do that, I said calmly, sliding my FBI retiree ID across the table. Just make sure the police are looped in. I'll be filing my own report. That evening, when I returned home, Amber was live streaming again. Her phone propped on a tripod, ring light glaring in her eyes. Hey, Glow fam. So excited for today's haul unboxing. I walked right through the frame, holding a thick envelope. Bruno, you're ruining my life, she snapped. I'm about to ruin more than that, I said quietly. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? This. I dropped the envelope on the table. Inside was a certified copy of the fraud report I'd filed with the credit union, along with a letter from their attorney. Her voice trembled just a little. What did you do? What you should have done. Told the truth. Scott came running from the hallway. Dad, what's going on? Ask your wife, I said, walking past him. She knows exactly what's going on. 2 hours later, she was screaming. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed my business. I looked at her, calm as ever. You destroyed it the day you stole my name. You can't prove that. I smiled. Amber, I worked 30 years at the Postal Service. Every package, every signature, every date stamp is traceable. And I kept every correspondence you ever sent about that loan in my filing cabinet, including the one where you accidentally copied me on your email to your business partner, saying, don't worry, I'll handle the paperwork under his name. Her face went pale. Scott looked between us confused. Amber, what's he talking about? She stammered. He's twisting things. He's sick. Enough, I said, standing. You had your fun humiliating me in front of neighbors and online. But now it's my turn. The next morning, a sheriff's deputy served her papers. Bank fraud, forgery, identity theft, the works. She broke down, crying on the porch while cameras flashed from curious neighbors. I didn't film it. I just watched, holding Martha's old recipe box in my hands. Scott came outside, face ashen. Dad, why didn't you tell me? Because, son, I said softly, you wouldn't have believed me. He hung his head. I thought she loved you. She loved your money, Scott. Same as she loved her followers. He nodded slowly. What happens now? She'll face charges. And as for this house, well, it's in your name, isn't it? Yeah. Then you decide who lives in it. There was a long pause. Then he whispered, I want you to stay. I studied his face, the same face I'd seen holding a fishing pole at age 8, grinning from ear to ear. I wanted to believe him, but some betrayals change a person permanently. I'll think about it, I said, walking to my truck. 2 weeks later, the case made local headlines. Influencer charged with loan forgery using father-in-law's identity. Amber's followers vanished overnight. Sponsors dropped her. LifeGlow shut down. Scott filed for divorce. He tried calling me a few times, but I didn't pick up right away. I needed time. Grief and betrayal don't heal on command. Instead, I drove back to Martha's grave with her recipe box beside me. The air was cool, the sky pink with sunset. I sat down beside her headstone. Justice served, sweetheart, I whispered. Took me a while, but I kept the receipts, just like you taught me. The wind rustled through the trees, almost like her laugh. I stayed there until the stars came out, then finally headed home. Not to Scott's house, but to a small place I'd rented near the post office. A new start. Quiet. Peaceful. A month later, a letter arrived from Scott. No email, no text. An actual letter in his handwriting. Dad, I'm sorry for everything. You were right about Amber. I should have listened. If you can ever forgive me, I'd like to visit. Maybe we can cook one of Mom's recipes together. I smiled, eyes watering a little. Martha would have liked that. I opened the cedar box, found her card for Sunday roast, and placed it on the counter. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about forgetting. It's about cooking something warm out of what's left. And for the first time since she passed, the house didn't feel so empty anymore. If you've ever been treated like you didn't matter because of your age, remember this. Experience is the one currency that never loses value. Amber thought I was just a grieving old man. She forgot that wisdom keeps records, and grief, when pushed too far, becomes clarity. This was my story of respect, revenge, and the receipts that never lie.